The sun glistened upon the moist, once dark surface. "Day has broken once again," Asper Niger thought. "I wonder how long it will last this time." The lengths of the days could vary. According to her relatives who had been alive a lot longer than she, light could shine from a very short time to a long interval. The only thing Asper found doubtful about this information was that they, like she, seemed to lose consciousness soon after the darkness fell, although her cousin told her that his friend's wife knew of a second aunt who had a grandma whose husband's best friend claimed he had founded an entire colony by himself, and all in the darkness. Her cousin also told her he heard this from Ahmi Ba, who had flown in from a distant colony and had serious short-term memory loss. Ahmi couldn't even remember she'd told a story about some distant relative that started a colony right after she disclosed it. Asper tried to trace the story from her cousin to her cousin's friend, but her cousin had moved away some days ago, and Ahmi wasn't any help either. Try as she might, Asper could not get Ahmi to remember anything, not even where she had come from. All she could get out of her was,
"What? I flew in from some place far away? Oh, it must be an exciting trip. Where did you come from? What were we talking about? Who are you? Where am I?"
Asper finally just left. She felt a little sorry for leaving Miss Ball calling after her.
"Wait, where was I going? Wait!"
But her sympathy was quickly replaced with disgust as Ahmi muttered,
"Oh, hello,"
and proceeded to dogging one of her old friends. Asper pretended not to notice as her friend ran faster, trying to escape the grasping hands of the practically no-brained foreigner. She then felt a little sorry for her friend, but quickly quelled the pointless emotion. "He was never really nice to me anyway," Asper said to herself, and she had continued on her way. She got up groggily, pushing away the nightmare of Ahmi. The day was on, and she had a mission to accomplish. Asper was not entirely sure of what it was she had to do, but she knew she had to do it. She felt it like an instinct, growing more powerful all the time, even in her sleep. She had to find out what it was. It was bugging her, gnawing at her very being, and she didn't want to wait for it to consume her entirely. She'd go insane, and then she was sure she would not be able to accomplish whatever it was she needed to do.
"Where are you going?"
Asper's father asked. Asper was amazed at how quickly he had gotten up in the light. "But of course," she thought irritably. "He's been around longer, probably had a lot more practice in getting up quick. I'm off to go find something," Asper said.
"Okay,"
he said, and went back to his breakfast. Asper snorted as she once again noticed how dim-witted her father was. "Almost as bad as that stupid Ahmi Ba wench," she thought nastily.
"Have fun,"
Asper's mother added. Asper just ignored her, knowing her mother wouldn't notice if she had gotten a reply. She had just given birth to yet another child, the 8th to be exact, and was probably still good to go for another 13. Asper was the oldest, but as there was no reason to help with her brothers and sisters, she had, for the past 5 siblings or so, simply left to wander around her town, which seemed to have grown since the last day she had seen it. She was getting so she would be able to stay up longer during the nights, but still could not see all that was going on. Each excursion seemed to have more and more meaning, and this one in particular, but she still could not discern what it was. She just looked at the population around her, growing all the time she noticed, but with nothing new ever happening, no events to watch. She walked faster in an attempt to escape the restless feeling hovering over her, haunting her like a phantom, forcing her to feel its presence but never allowing her to see it. It also prevented her from seeing her neighbor's pet in time to avoid tripping over it. Asper stifled herself from yelling in outrage at the little thing. She stood up again and stared at it as it stared back at her, hunger and ferocity building up in its eyes.
"Mr. Sia, come here, my cute little baby."
Asper sighed in relief as it turned its gaze away from her and bounded over to her neighbor, Mr. Penny Cilium, but hid her relief as she gave her neighbor an annoyed look. He was almost as dumb as her dad. Asper had heard these kinds of pets were dangerous.
"Hey, Asper, you like my new dog?"
Sure, Mr. Cilium," Asper said, carefully keeping her voice even as she thought,
"You idiot! What are you doing keeping a stupid beast like that for a pet?"
"He's a rickettsia, but I call him Mr. Sia for short."
"Fool! Don't you know what that thing does?"
"Really? That sounds interesting, Mr. Cilium, but, don't you think it—"
"He,"
Mr. Cilium interrupted.
"Yes, he
"Might be a little, I don't know, dangerous?"
"Nonsense!"
Mr. Cilium bellowed and laughed. Asper listened to his laugh, noticing for the first in a long time how it seemed to ring out from the very depths of his soul, like whatever he was laughing at was the only thing that mattered. Normally, anyone around him got caught up and began to laugh too, whether they understood what the joke was or not, but Asper was the only one nearby listening to him, and she wasn't in the mood to laugh, even though she felt like there was something she should notice, something she should do here, as if this would be the last time she would ever hear that infectious laugh. Mr. Cilliam seemed to notice her uncomfortable shifting because he stopped laughing.
Ricket is the sweetest thing you'll ever meet,
He said.
Watch.
Asper watched as Mr. Cilliam hunched over and roughly stroked the hideous-looking Rickettsia.
Who's a good little Sia? Who's my cute little doggy? Who's the sweetest little critter of them all?
Mr. Cilliam? Asper tried to squeeze in, but her senseless neighbor ignored her, intent on proving how sweet and cuddly and cute his ugly creature was, and remaining oblivious to the greedy and ravenous look that was again coming into the Ricketts' eyes.
You are, aren't you, you pretty little...
Mr. Cilliam! Asper said loudly, causing her neighbor to lower the beast from his face and stopping it from pouncing him.
What?
Asper hesitated. He seemed genuinely attached to his pet, and she didn't want to ruin his fun, but she didn't want him to get hurt, little though she cared for anyone here. Have fun with your, dog. I really need to go.
Okay, see you later.
He called after her brightly. Yeah, see ya. But somehow she didn't think she would. The phantom was becoming a ghoul, running a cold finger across her back, laughing silently in the back of her mind as she helplessly tried to run away, the silent laughter becoming a dull roar in her brain, echoing off the sides of her head, disrupting her trains of thoughts, distracting her. She strode at a furious pace, scarcely noticing she was quickly leaving behind the world she knew, blindly charging toward the outskirts of her town. She closed her eyes and shook her head in an effort to clear her mind. Wham! She slammed into somebody, resulting in the both of them falling in a heap. What the heck are you doing? Don't you watch where you're going? Sorry, Asper said absently. She scrambled up and turned to glance at who it was she had collided with. She looked up at her victim. The second one today, she thought, and saw it was a tall guy, another foreigner. Gosh, is this town filled with foreigners or what? He stared at Asper, wearing an expression that, to Asper, was a cross of, well, many temperaments. The main discernible ones were annoyance and contempt. Asper stared back, unknowingly being challenged to a staring contest. What do you want? What are you doing? Do you mind? Asper blinked and shook her head again, more annoyed than her collidee looked. She started walking again, picking up speed as she checked herself for injury. Seeing none, she turned to the road ahead, realizing now that she was lost. Suddenly her mission ghoul assaulted her, raging and violent and apprising the importance of her mission, making her jump with the vehemence of the emotion. She turned around, noticing not only that the ghoul took on a different semblance and aura and produced a different sentiment, but also seeing the guy she had just crashed through whirl in mid-step to admire something to the left, to the right, behind him, then up at the sky. There was nothing around to admire except for the sky, not that there was much to see up there either. He spun slowly on his heel until he was facing backwards, the opposite direction that Asper was going, and that he was too, apparently, until she had turned around. He kept looking up. Weirdo, Asper thought. She turned back around. The ghoul began to pressure her again, but this time away from walking in a dream and toward reality. In this way she was able to hear the guy's footsteps following her. She whipped her head around, and this time the guy sharply veered off to the left and wandered slowly in a large circle. She narrowed her eyes. Her first reaction to his actions was to be amused, but the combination of her mood, courtesy of the ghoul, and her natural suspicious disposition swapped her amusement for uneasiness and apprehension. What did this guy want, anyway? She went into a full-blown running walk, the fastest she could go without changing her pace to an actual run. The dude's paces quickened behind her. Asper moved faster, faster than she ever had before, faster than she ever thought she could, but it didn't seem to be fast enough. The guy kept pace easily. Asper abruptly whirled around, unable to keep from taking some kind of action any longer, and charged back toward him. He jerked off to the side, searching for an escape, but there was none. Don't pull any of that stuff. I know you were following me. Now spill it. Why are you pursuing me? I already told you I was sorry for barreling through you, and as far as I know I haven't done anything else. As Asper ranted, she noticed his startled expression, which gave her some satisfaction. She was also pleased to see him back off a bit from her hostility, albeit her hostility was feigned. But then, how could he know it was feigned? He didn't know her. He couldn't know that she wouldn't be able to attack anyone she thought was cute. What? No, he wasn't cute, she admonished herself.